Hey, everybody, it's Devin.
Scorpion bowls.
Oh, yeah.
Scorpion bowl.
She hasn't even said who she is yet.
Scorpion bowl.
It's Kate.
Hi.
That's Kate.
Scorpion bowl.
Welcome to Med Crimes.
It's a nice moment because Devin and I are kid-free tonight and we are alone, and we just decided we're gonna go get Chinese food and share a scorpion bowl because we haven't done that since college, and I haven't had a scorpion bowl at all since college.
I think it's been over a decade.
That's all I can talk about or think about.
We're pushing almost 2 decades.
Ugh.
Isn't that disturbing?
Yep. Scorpion bowl.
Well.
Okay. Anyway,
that's our Friday night plans. How about you folks?
Yeah. How about you folks? How about you folks?
How about them apples?
How about them apples?
We're so weird.
Listen, I think we need to dive right into this.
I'm ready.
Because I have a special episode.
The last time we had a special episode, we were talking about decomposition into a bucket.
Okay. That was a special episode.
Mm-hmm.
This is also a special episode for a much different reason. April is Workplace Violence Prevention Month. So
there's this nurse practitioner at my work that keeps harassing me, and I've complained multiple times. Just kidding.
It's me. I'm the problem.
You're the anti-hero.
I'm the anti-hero. So we are going to switch gears.
Interesting.
I know. We are going to switch gears a little bit.
Violence, huh?
We are going to talk about something super important to all of us. And we are going to talk about violence against healthcare workers. We're going to discuss a few cases of violence against healthcare workers.
Damn.
All in different settings and scenarios.
This is interesting.
I know. These are crimes committed against healthcare workers instead of healthcare workers committing the crimes.
Good for you.
Right? Good for us
Good
is
for
what
you.
I say to that. So, in keeping with the theme, which is April being Workplace Violence Prevention Month, here we are to do this. I know that I personally have stories about being touched, being grabbed, being threatened, being swung at. And I'm one of the lucky ones that has never sustained an actual injury from that. Because there are so many people that do sustain injuries and people that are critically injured or even killed by encounters that happen in their workplaces and while performing their duties as healthcare workers.
Yeah.
So,
especially in our setting too.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are our workplaces. We should be able to go there and feel safe. And I think that most healthcare workers out there at least have witnessed some kind of contact or some interactions among their coworkers or had it done to them themselves. And it's really a very sad situation. So, trigger warnings here: sexual assault, physical violence against healthcare workers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by discussing a couple of cases, and one in particular that has been in the media somewhat recently had me really thinking about this and really wanting to do something to sort of shine a light on the issues here because and I kind of had trouble because it's such a new thing that just happened that there's very little information out there on it, and the trial hasn't even happened yet, but we're going to go over what's happening. And then, after we talk about the cases, we're going to move into some of the details and what laws are in place, what laws should be in place, and what we can all do to help be the change, essentially. So, I want to reiterate too that I had a very hard time selecting a lot of the cases to discuss in this episode because there are so many.
I'm sure.
And it is really unfortunate on how many of these reports there are. And I wish I had the time and the ability to talk about every single one of these. But I don't, because all of these are stories that should be told. And I think a few times a season, we should start doing these little compilation episodes where we talk about these because... And if you guys have any stories you want to share of things that have happened to you or things that you've witnessed while you're on the job in whatever setting you work in, we want to know about it. We want to hear about it. And maybe we'll talk about it on one of these episodes or one of break room banter thing.
Yeah, that would be, if we got enough stories in right now to be able to talk about people's workplace violence experiences for
100%.
break room banter around April, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. So with that, I think, I'd like to just like keep that conversation going. I think it's an
Yeah.
important issue that we all really need to sort of focus on.
We go into the field to help people, most of us,
Mhm.
right? And we're all natural caregivers and
Mhm.
whatnot. And it's not always seen on the other side some of the things that could be dealt with
Mhm.
in that role.
Absolutely. And you know, a bigger issue too is that a lot of times our companies that we work for, you know, whatever setting you're working for is really not equipping us with the best tools
Mm.
to be protected in these situations. A lot of people have reported being injured or being put in an unsafe situation and then being asked, you know, well, what could you have done better in that situation?
Mm.
When it's like, well, what could you have done better actually? You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, so we'll talk a little bit more about it and we'll get a little bit more into it, but just a really disturbing fact to start off with is that 70% of all violent crimes in a workplace in the United States are committed against healthcare workers and social services.
70% of all crimes?
Of all violent crimes that occur in a workplace are
Whoa.
against healthcare workers and social service workers.
Wow.
70%, which is
I didn't realize it was that high.
unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And these, we'll talk a little bit more about some more statistics and the things that have gotten exponentially worse over even just the past few years and why
Jesus.
it's such a critical issue right now.
How much of it has to do with mental health?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. A
Mhm.
ton. And the ones that we're going to talk about here, I think, have a huge
Mhm.
mental health
Mhm.
component. So we'll talk about it. The first case I wanted to talk about is this horrific case of Joyce Grayson. Does that name ring a bell?
Home health care worker?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the one, like I said, I really wanted to talk about because it really raised a lot of concerns and shined a light in particular on a lot of the safety gaps with home health. And being a home health employee working for, you know, hospice or being a home health care nurse or aide or PT or OT, because it's an entirely different, you know, scenario than what I'm used to. I've never done home health.
You're very independent in home health versus
You are your
group
own
type
little
setting.
silo.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we'll get into that too. But first, let's talk a little bit about Joyce. So for starters, this case is very recent. Like I said, this
Mhm.
happened at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
So actually, while the suspect is in custody, he has not yet been charged with any violent crimes. So
Why?
we'll talk about it,
Okay.
but this is all alleged thus far.
Right.
We're just going to talk about the facts.
Put that word in there.
Alleged.
Alleged.
So we're going to talk about the facts of the case, what the findings were, and sort of where we stand right now with
Mhm.
that. And I absolutely will do an update on this.
Connecticut, right? Wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So close to home for us. I mean, that's
Mhm.
a few hours away driving distance. So
Mhm.
Joyce Grayson was a 63-year-old visiting nurse working for a company called Elara Caring out of Willimantic, Connecticut. She was married to her husband, Ronald, and the two had 6 children together, many of whom had their own spouses and children, and so she was also a grandmother of 4.
Mm.
I know from her obituary that she grew up on a dairy farm in Sterling, Connecticut, and it also read that she loved to volunteer her time to the community. And like, if there was anything like going on in the community, she would be like, sign me up, put me
Aw,
in, I will help.
good for her.
Additionally, she was also frequently a foster parent. She fostered
Ugh.
like, I think I read somewhere like 20 or 30 foster kids throughout her life. I mean, this is a woman who was like
That could
just
be me one day.
giving,
Mhm.
was just giving all of herself to everyone around her.
Wow, what a woman.
I know. She took in
It's
tons of
not
kids.
that's not an easy thing to do
No,
at
that's
all.
like a selfless situation right there.
Mhm.
And so she took in all these kids that needed homes and structure and love, and she was that for a ton of kids. She also loved baking and cooking, and she was an avid camper. And she would take frequent trips to Florida, like little short vacations for like a tropical, you know, situation. And she loved her family fiercely. She was reportedly the sweetest, kindest, would do
I'm in love
anything
with
for
her.
everybody. I know,
I'm in love with her.
I stan her. Yes. And per reports, she was a very talented nurse, very strong nurse, had been a nurse for 30-ish years
Mm.
and absolutely loved her job,
No.
loved what she did. So she worked in home health. Elara is a home health care company. And for those of you who don't know, home health is a branch of healthcare and nursing services in which companies will dispatch nurses, aides, physical therapists, PTAs, OTAs, sometimes providers, social workers to the homes of patients in order to provide their care. And this usually gets them a visit from each of those like 2-3 times a week, depending on their need. And what it does is it's nice because it's, you know, a way for people to be able to maintain their independence, stay at home, but have sort of that extra layer of help.
Monitoring,
Some
oversight.
eyes, exactly. So Joyce, being home health nurse, would probably have been doing things like wound care, medication monitoring, vital signs, lab work. She could do blood draws at home so people don't have to go all the way to the clinic for that. They even do IV therapies and they do full clinical assessments and all the nurse stuff just in a patient's home. So home health nurses and aides and PTOT staff are often the first ones to recognize an acute medical issue when there is one in the home.
Yeah.
And are the ones, you know, oftentimes that are picking up the phone and calling 911 because something is very wrong, and will initiate that chain of action. So a very critically important role. And they help people, like I said, sort of retain that independence and remain healthy and happy and safe in their homes. So it's a great, you know, thing that exists that helps people maintain that independence.
Each level of care is important. And
that,
you know, especially when we're discharging people from our setting, right? We always want to have some kind of home health service in there to just monitor for a little while, make sure that transition is going okay.
Exactly.
It's very hard to get for long term. You know, it's very hard to get for long term and to continue to justify a need. But at least for the first month or two home, you know.
That's right. Yep, absolutely.
It's very important.
And Joyce
it's very rare we ever send someone home without some sort of home health. Whether it's just therapy or therapy and nursing.
Even if it's for a week, just for them to like assess and make sure they're functioning in the home.
Safe.
You know, it's just that little extra layer, right? And then there's that hospice too, which hospice is a service that's available in multiple settings. They can do it in a nursing home. They can provide it at home too. And it provides all of those layers, you know, the nursing, the sometimes therapy. They provide equipment in the home for people that are at the end of their lives and need that support and that health care, but want to remain at home and pass peacefully at home. So it's because of hospice that is really even an option for a lot of people. And I mean, it's a very noble thing that they do. So that's another service that's often given through home health and in the home. And Joyce's specialty that she loved was mental health. So she did a lot for mental health. She even worked, I think it was for the state hospital prior to her 10 years with Alara. So she had a lot of experience and a huge depth of experience with mental health. One of her patients was 38-year-old Michael Reese. He resided in a halfway house in Willimantic, Connecticut. Reese was on probation for a sexual assault conviction occurring back in 2007. After having served 15 years for this crime. So this man, whom is actively on probation for a violent crime, and Reese was Joyce's first stop of the day on October 28th, 2023. So actually, Reese is one of 3 men residing in that residence who were on the sex offender registry.
Oh, man.
So Reese is her first stop of the day. So 8 o'clock in the morning, she's got an appointment with Reese at this place. What happened after Joyce arrived is not known for sure.
Right.
Again, Reese has not been charged with any crimes.
Alleged what we think may have happened.
Exactly. So Reese has not been charged with any crimes at this time relating to what happened to Joyce. So he is considered innocent until he's proven guilty. I am not insinuating that he did anything to her. I will state the findings that are known here, but that is all I know. There's a lot that we don't know yet. So Joyce shows up to see Michael Reese that morning as her first stop of the day. After this supposed visit, the day goes on, and her family begins to become concerned when she does not return home after her visit. When they contact the company reveals that she missed a bunch of appointments that day.
Other patients are probably calling, "Where's my nurse?
Where's my nurse?" In fact, she missed every appointment she had set up for that day after her first appointment of the day with Mr. Reese. So that is incredibly unlike her. She is a timely, prompt
and makes
human
you
being.
Suspect of what happened at this visit. She made it to this one.
And then what happened? Exactly. So her family immediately knows something is wrong and reports her missing to the authorities. Thankfully, Joyce had family and friends location sharing turned on her phone, which is an iPhone thing.
Sorry. Not an iPhone fan.
Loser over here.
Sorry.
So her family was super astute and thought to check this because they were able to see her location.
Okay.
She shares her location with her family pod.
Right.
So her location was on Chapman Street in Willimantic, which was the address of this halfway house that Joyce had visited at 8 a.m. this morning. So police later on did end up locating Joyce's Hyundai Sonata, and it was parked at a nearby business, also in Willimantic. They brought a canine unit out, and the canine picked up her scent at the car.
Course, yeah.
So armed with all of this information that her phone was saying she was actively still at this house, police were dispatched to that house and they went and knocked on the door. And of note, the canine signaled immediately that he was picking up her scent at this address.
Wow.
Upon trying to enter, officers see a man exiting the rear of this halfway house and attempting to run. So he was apprehended on the property. They chased him down. They got him. On him, he had drug paraphernalia, reportedly some kind of crack pipe and maybe some drugs. This alone...
God, this sounds so dangerous.
I know. So, and this man was Michael Reese. So this alone, him having that drug paraphernalia on him was enough to charge him with violation of his parole and possession of drug paraphernalia. So on his person, when he was apprehended, they also found credit cards belonging to Joyce Grayson and the key fob to her vehicle. Upon entering and searching the home, unfortunately, police made the discovery of Joyce's remains in the basement of the halfway house.
Oh my God.
Nothing is known or is public. This is literally nightmare fuel. Once I heard this, I was like, new fear unlocked. Like literally, this is the stuff of nightmares. This is a literal horror movie that is unfolding. And this,
I know several of our local home healthcare nurses.
Oh my God, yes.
And I'm just like,
I have many acquaintances and friends that work in home health every single day. And it's like,
it makes me want to ask them, what has your company done since this has broken out?
Thank you.
To make you safe.
Yes, thank you.
What things are there?
What have they put in place to protect you from this happening, from you being put in this situation? Because wow, that she was put in this situation. Just wow.
Yeah, for sure.
So nothing is known or made public at this point in terms of details about the condition that she was found in. But according to ABC News, the chief of Willimantic PD went on record to say that this was the worst crime scene he has encountered in his 27 years of service.
Oh, man.
So, thankfully, Reese is currently in custody for those unrelated drug charges, as he was kind enough to flee the scene and have a crack pipe in his pocket, because otherwise...
They
might not even...
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, because he violated his parole, I don't think they're going to bail him. They are keeping him there, and he's not going anywhere. In February, he did appear in court, but for the drug charges. He has not been charged with a violent crime because it is so recent that they are still building this case, and they need to make this airtight.
They haven't been able to connect anything yet? No DNA, no...
If they haven't made it public.
Okay.
So I'm sure those things are all in process. It does take time. There's a lot of things that they need to do, and
they want to get it right.
So that
he's not.
If they fuck this up,
out.
He's just going to walk away, and that would be the worst case scenario.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, we're only talking. We're in April. This was
exactly. This
November,
was
December.
This was 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So reportedly an autopsy has been completed, but her cause and manner of death still remains sealed. They'll release that when the trial happens. So very, very few details are currently available until the charges can be dropped.
Poor woman. She must have been so terrified.
Can you imagine the fear?
No. You're there to give care.
Yeah.
And then
she's there to just do her job and take care of someone. She showed up there to...
Did you say in the beginning and I missed it what he needed home health services for?
So he had mental health issues, and it was medication monitoring is what I read. So I think she was going there to check up on, make sure he's taking his meds, set up his meds for him maybe.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, especially knowing criminal charge, like what his past was, that there definitely should have been some safety stuff. Because I'm just thinking, wait a minute, you're just talking about him running away from the house. Like, what does he need home health for? You know what I mean?
No, I know. Physically, I don't think it was an issue, but it was a mental health related sort of situation. And listen, I am not shitting on
that
people
shit needs
that
to be changed to outpatient and have them go somewhere.
Yes, I'm
saying,
sorry.
That type of level you're not homebound.
No.
You're not homebound.
No. If you can flee the scene.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not.
Yeah.
You're not meeting criteria for home health anymore, friend. But there also were legal issues there. He was paroled. He was wearing a bracelet.
It's
a different state.
Different things. Yes.
So there may have been logistical issues in why home health was the best choice for him. The details on that, again, I don't have.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not shitting on people who have been to jail. People who have been to jail are human beings. We don't need to judge people on their past.
You're right. Absolutely.
But if you have a history of violent crime, sexual assault.
And he wasn't the only one there.
And he was.
There was three of them.
3 sex offenders in that house and Joyce.
That was not a smart move to have a nurse go to a halfway house.
That was more than not smart. That
one
was
person alone.
That was asking for it.
Because in prison,
I'm sorry.
Don't they have, again, I don't know, so I'm just stating this, but aren't there guards with nurses? I know I have a friend that works in a prison, but
right, yeah. I don't actually know. We should know that, but I don't know that. Anybody who work in correctional facilities, please let us know. But I feel like there's some kind of escort situation.
I feel like there is too.
And it may be different for different levels. I don't know.
I would hope so. I would hope just your community jail,
right,
has different stuff than a maximum security.
Exactly.
And again, we're not saying that prisoners don't deserve health care.
No, of course
that's not what we're saying. But you do have to make sure that the staff are safe.
Exactly. So with this whole scenario, of course, the things that we're talking about, it's raising huge red flags about home healthcare workers in general and why these healthcare workers are being dispatched alone to these houses when you're not screening your patients. I mean, if somebody had taken a look at this guy's history and said, this is a guy with a conviction of a violent crime. Maybe we should not send a lone nurse to his homestead.
Correct.
I mean, that's common sense. It's common sense. Background checks on people with home health referrals are not common. That almost no companies do that.
I don't even think we do. I don't even think we do a full for our setting. And
for referrals and stuff.
Right.
No.
I mean, there's certain levels of some screenings that we're able to do to do an immediate red flag of big things.
Right. But I feel like without any vetting of the patients to be sure that they don't have any violent crime convictions or recent history of violence or are on the sex offender registry, I feel like that's just.
I do know that one in our setting, New Hampshire is a non-discriminatory state. You know what I mean? And so we can't not accept someone because they're a sex offender.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
We're not even allowed to look that up,
Sure.
But into
they're
their
coming
home,
into your facility.
Correct.
You've got support.
You're not going to their place alone.
Going into their home
environment
alone. We have no idea what's in that house. What condition is the house in?
You don't know the type of people that live with them.
People don't do home visits to vet things to know that you're not walking into a fire hazard or there's so many layers to this, and it's now opening everyone's eyes to
that level needs to be different.
Is this house condemnable? And you're letting me walk in here? You know what I mean? There's so many possibilities. When you're going into
the patient's environment, you do absolutely need that extra level of screening because you don't know who you're going to encounter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's in the house.
Our setting, while has a lot of, things that are secure and aren't secure, there's extra people for backup when things could happen.
Yes.
And
absolutely. And again, not shitting all over people who have convictions.
No, of course not.
All I'm saying is don't send one nurse to a home of a person who has a conviction for a violent crime and is on the sex offender registry. I mean, that should be a no-brainer. This was 100% avoidable if the company had done anything to protect their employees from this. So understandably, this triggered a massive public outcry. I mean, there was stuff. I remember seeing stuff on the internet all over the place, all over TikTok, all over Facebook, all about all of this. And home health companies went on record starting to state that there were days in the past where they used to have an escort, a police escort or some form of security to escort healthcare workers to see patients in their homes who have a violent past for their safety. But this has fallen by the wayside because staffing has been so shitty and they just don't have the resources in most communities to offer that anymore. So that was a practice at one point in time.
Yeah.
But it's like, why did we let that just go away?
Well,
that seems reasonable.
Everyone's favorite word, staffing.
Staffing, exactly. But it's like, our staffing is shitty, so you just now have to just take on the inherent physical risk of putting you in a dangerous situation. And
I bet you that's different now.
Oh, I should fucking hope it's different now. Healthcare workers across the country started calling for more protection and more safeguards against violence. And now in the state of Connecticut, lawmakers have recently passed some legislation on violence against healthcare workers, but this was more aimed at like the hospital and clinic-based setting and did little to protect home health nurses. So the question remains, why was Joyce left alone with this man who was on probation for a violent crime in his environment, in his house?
Absolutely.
Alara Caring did release a statement, of course, in Joyce's honor. And they have, like, if you look at their website, they have this little memoriam thing for her. And it states that the company does have safety protocols in place, however, declined to comment exactly what these safety protocols are and what they do to train their employees. There was this beautiful vigil held in their town and for Joyce weeks after her death, which hundreds of nurses came to show their respect for Joyce and the family and mourn her death. And her family is preparing to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Reese in connection with Joyce's death. So
not against the company?
I think something should come with the company for sure. But I think they're preparing to file a lawsuit more so against Reese right now. So more to come on that. We will do an update on that for sure. Joyce's family has set up a GoFundMe as they continue to fight for better protection for home healthcare workers and pursue their case against Reese. So if you're interested in donating, you can just Google Joyce Grayson. It's Grayson and GoFundMe. And it's the first thing that pops up. It's like right on the top there. Good. They've actually already raised almost $50,000, which is incredible.
That's amazing.
So please go check that out if you're interested in doing more with that. That is That's horrifying story.
I can't wait. I mean, I can wait, but I really want to know what unfolds here.
God,
and I really want to know what the home health agency is doing going forward.
So much.
Because you can't keep up what you were doing knowing that happened.
Like changes need to be made. Like we, thankfully, I mean, it's horrible that Joyce had to die for anyone to pay any attention to this and for this to be on anyone's radar.
Right.
But I'm hoping that her death is not in vain and that some big changes and legislation comes from this.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean,
it has to.
It
has to.
Horrifying.
We won't get people in the healthcare field. You know what I mean? You keep hearing about these. Why would people want to go into a field that's going to risk their lives?
So, and we'll get into that too. But like you ask nurses why they're leaving the bedside, and some of it is pay. Some of it is their work ratios and unrealistic expectations. And some of it is that they don't fucking feel safe.
Wow.
It's so sad.
It's awful.
So let's then move to 65-year-old Elaine Wilson from Southbridge, Massachusetts.
What's going on in New England?
I know, New England. Calm down, New England, all right? So she showed up at work at Harrington Hospital, having worked there in various departments for 40 years. She was close to retirement, and the date was June 14th, 2017, when 24-year-old Connor O'Regan walked into the hospital with a knife and attacked Elise violently. He went on to stab her 11 times about the left arm and the torso. He was apprehended by security at the hospital shortly after. And later on, he stated that he had walked into the hospital that day with a plan to randomly attack a healthcare worker as he was upset about treatment he received while visiting the ER with a wrist injury a week prior.
Oh, gosh.
What the actual fuck, dude?
It's making me think, and it's interesting over the last 10 years. And I know we're no different than schools, right? But we have to do armed intruder drills.
Which,
it's insane. But schools are doing it too, which is even more baffling to my mind. At least we're goddamn adults.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Because you just never know that
because
risk
people
is
like
there.
This who are just fucking walking around.
I didn't like how you treated me. I'm coming in with my knife.
I'm just gonna come and knife someone.
Did she survive?
So she was rushed to the ER and she was found in critical condition. She underwent an 8-hour emergency surgery on her arm as multiple nerves and her brachial artery had been severed. She almost bled to death. She almost died. She was on a ventilator and a feeding tube for days. Required ICU level of care after this. Thankfully, she survived.
She did? Oh,
and
wow.
she's made a recovery and is doing well, but has permanent lasting effects from this attack.
Hello?
She has little strength and sensation in that arm, and she fears that eventually she's going to lose muscle tone and have contractures in that hand. Following her attack, she and her husband were active in lobbying for better protection for healthcare workers in hospital settings as well.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, literally anyone can just fucking walk through the door, walk into an inpatient unit with anything, and do whatever the fuck they want. Inpatient units are like wide open to the public. Anyone can walk in, which I would like to think that they should be, so that people can come and go and visit their loved ones and get in if they have business being there, but not just literally anyone.
Tangent moment for a second?
Yeah.
This is reminding me, almost a year ago, I was acting director of nursing at the time, and we were kind of in a high stressful situation. And there was a family member that we were going to now not allow to visit anymore. But we were having a hard time getting an officer to deliver the no trespass. This family member had, to a staff member, made them feel threatened, right? And fortunately, we had the backup that to give the advice of, you will call the police, you will, you don't have to take this, this is what you're going to do, and you're going to get that no trespass order.
And that's how it should be.
Which is what we did. However, because the police were having a hard time locating him, we knew that this person came every evening to visit. So we were preparing to not let him in, but if the police hadn't gotten to him first and we had to tell him,
then
we were preparing for what happens at that front door. Who's going to be there? Who's going to stop them? And at acting DON at that point in time, everyone's kind of like looking at me, and I'm like...
And you're like, should I?
I have 2 little boys at home. What are you talking about?
What are you looking at me for? Like, exactly.
I can get us through a survey. I can do a lot of things.
I can train you,
I can do so many things, but I'm like, I don't have this.
This is not my element.
I remember looking at the staff.
It should not be our element.
And it was a very terrifying afternoon. Fortunately, the police were able to give him that, and we never had to encounter that situation. But it was just an example of, is this really what we're doing right now? Is this really what we're having to think about?
Yes.
And who's going to be that person to go to the front door?
That has to
that could
face
potentially,
this guy.
I mean, it could have potentially been no issue, right?
Sure.
But we have to prepare for the worst.
But you have to, what if he had a weapon in his car?
Yeah.
And he flipped his shit? Like, you just
Staff were already feeling threatened when we were allowing him to visit.
Yes.
And so because we reached a point that it was, thankfully we were supported that it was no longer going to happen.
Right.
But I'm like, oh God, why are y'all looking at me? Like, I don't have this.
This isn't my wheelhouse. I don't know what you mean.
It was awful.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, that's a horrifying situation. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
Which, like, similar situation to this. So for Elise, following her attack, the hospital did make some changes.
Good.
So the hospital she worked at did install metal detectors at all public entrances. So anybody coming in those free and open entrances had to go through a metal detector, and panic buttons on all badges for staff, which that probably should have happened.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the story of Elise, and it's heartbreaking. And you can Google her also, and look at some of the work that she's done. She's put out articles and interviews about her experience, and you can actually see there's pictures of her like holding up her arm and showing the scars and like the lasting effects from her encounter, which like for her, like that's going to last a lifetime. Like, she's never going to be the same. It's just so sad that she had to go through that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's now head over to Memphis, Tennessee, where a Dr. Benjamin Mauck, a skilled and gifted pediatric orthopedic surgeon, was working at the Campbell Clinic. He served at the time as the chief of the Department of Congenital Hand and Arm Disease.
Oh.
So he was an orthopedist who specialized in correcting birth defects of the hand and arm.
Wow.
And primarily in children, but he also treated adults. His friends and family reported he just absolutely loved his job, and he was so good at it. He boasted a 4.9 star rating. And
I would too.
I mean, his patients loved him. Like, he had just the best marks His co-workers were like, he was gracious. He was kind to work with. No one ever had an issue with him. And just, he was just such a being of light in his practice. So in 2016, Dr. Mauck was seeing a patient by the name of Larry Pickens in his clinic. And he had seen Larry quite a few times, so he was not new to this gentleman. The two were alone together in an exam room when staff suddenly heard multiple gunshots ring out. On the scene, hospital security responded and apprehended Pickens, whom had a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia and reportedly had not been taking his medications. In the exam room laid the body of Dr. Benjamin Mauck.
Oh, no.
Whom had been shot multiple times. He was killed at the age of 43, leaving behind his wife Rhiannon and his 2 young children. So, Pickens was, of course, arrested and held without bail. He was found to have been, like I said, a long-term patient of Dr. Mauck. And historically, he had been accused and charged with attacking his mother's boyfriend on 2 separate occasions and was even charged at one point with his attempted murder. So, I mean, this is a guy with a violent past who has obvious mental health issues, but is off his medication. So not in a good place, not stable at all. Those charges with his mother's boyfriend did end up being dropped, and he was never convicted of this, FYI. So all of that is hearsay. But these 2 separate incidents were in 2014 and then 2019. So, I mean, when you hear that there's like consistent, questions being raised about this guy being violent, like he's probably doing some shit that he's not supposed to be doing.
Right.
Let's be honest. He did have 1 conviction on record for an unlawful possession of a firearm as well. Okay. So it's known that this guy is having encounters with the law and maybe a history of violent behavior. So now in August of this past year, actually, August of 2023, Pickens appeared in court for a hearing on whether he was able to finally stand trial because this guy's mental health had been such an issue since he's been incarcerated. And currently, trials on this have been further delayed for continued testing regarding his competency. Wow. So he has still not been felt well enough to stand trial for this. So he's been accused and not yet proven guilty again.
No. Wow.
And then this shines more of a light, I think, on like our broken mental health system, honestly.
Of course.
Who was helping this man, following this man, and what systems are in place to ensure that people that have violent tendencies when they are off of their regimen don't fall through the cracks, because this man is now going, to probably spend the rest of his life in prison for a violent crime, which or committed. And all of that might have been preventable.
Absolutely.
If he hadn't fallen through the cracks somehow.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot that isn't really his responsibility either.
Right.
So, I mean, the whole system is just so broken, and it's so unfortunate that people are being hurt and killed because of our broken mental health system.
It's in a way easy to fix, but also not easy to fix.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. And then to be able to give people the independence that they deserve when they've reached stability.
Yes.
But knowing, then how do you monitor it? Knowing that the risk is there that they could become unstable.
Exactly.
And I think it's that monitoring phase too that's also like null and void.
Exactly.
And, we have limited resources, but they're there for people when they're critical.
Yes.
But then once they're stable, like where's that check-in?
Where does that fall? Exactly. Yeah. And then it's raising the, when in the clinic environment, and I have very little experience in the clinic, so maybe some of you clinic people can shine a light on this, but you are just being shoved into these little boxes, little rooms with these people, and it's just you and them.
Right.
And so this person could be anything or anyone and have anything on them because many hospitals and clinics don't have things like metal detectors or screening at the door. And if they had just had that in place at the facility, he would have never gotten through the door.
Yeah. Wow, you're right.
So another death of a devoted healthcare worker that had half his life ahead of it that was 100% preventable.
Why do you think we don't have... We have all of this stuff in airports. Why do you think it's not in healthcare places?
I think it's a cost and a staffing issue. Because if you have a metal detector, someone's got to be there.
Someone's got to monitor it.
That's a huge cost 24/7 for a hospital,
Right.
for a clinic, or
Right.
for any environment, for
Right.
outpatient center, outpatient surgery center, anywhere
Yeah.
that allows visits. Which is so depressing that the cost is not, that it's not worth protecting your healthcare team because that cost is just too much. When you know those CEOs are driving their fucking Lambos and
yeah, for sure,
and cruising on their yachts and taking their European vacations every year.
Behind the paywall.
Behind the paywall. I mean, it's just like maddening. It's maddening. Little inside joke. So
you guys won't get it.
You guys won't get it. So
it is related to this show, though.
Oh my God. So those are the 3 cases we're going to kind of close out with. We're going to talk a little bit more about like the issue at hand. So up to 38% of healthcare workers
to dig at the issue.
Yeah, I know. We pretty much have been
keeping us damn safe.
We have been pounding on the issue at hand. So up to 38% of healthcare workers are victims of violence at some point in their careers. According to the World Health Organization. According to World Health Organization, and that's according to the World Healthcare Organization. And that number has risen over the years. In fact, in a 2022 study conducted by the American College of Physicians, 55% of ER physicians reported being subjected to physical violence at some point in their careers. 55%. And they don't spend as much time with the patients as the techs and the nurses and the aides do.
Right. Yeah.
These are the physicians.
Those are the guys that are in and out.
Yeah, exactly. So incidents involving violence towards healthcare workers has doubled between 2011 and 2018. Doubled.
Whoa. And that's 6 years ago. So how much now?
Well, that's the thing. And this is not just a growing problem in the US. This is all over the world. This is all over the world.
So here we are, not only 4 years ago, putting our life at risk over this unknown virus that was just randomly killing people.
This is what we have to deal with.
We also are having the people that we're trying to take care of attacking us at all ends in different home health, hospitals, clinics.
Yeah. And it's the lack of support from the higher ups is the big problem, because healthcare workers are often being told by their companies that, no, you can't press charges because of the patient's mental status and because of the mental health issues. So healthcare workers have long since been expected to just deal with it and just hope on a day-to-day basis that they don't get seriously injured or murdered or sexually assaulted.
And this is the big stuff too. Like it's not even the little things that you have to deal with, combativeness and overly touchy patients and
Yep. It's just a very bleak piece of healthcare that healthcare workers have to encounter this regularly, and that it's become so normal to an extent to me and you. I mean, we deal with verbal abuse and you know what I mean? Like from patients and from family members even, and physical abuse, physical violence, which, in certain settings, it is to be expected. It's something that you train for. But when it's, there are weapons and people coming in and, nurses getting killed and choked and kicked, having their knees kicked out and needing knee replacements because of it, like, something needs to change.
Yes, for sure. 1000%.
So, and then when an incident does happen, nursing admin, again, is responding with, well, what could you have been doing differently? You know what I mean? In that scenario, when it's like, the question really should be like, no, what could you have done differently to protect, to have prevented this?
Absolutely.
Like with Elaine Wilson, again, metal detectors at the door. This guy's not getting through the doors with his knife in his pocket.
Right.
And metal detectors at the clinic door. This guy's not going anywhere with a gun. Totally preventable. If they would just incur that cost and invest in their healthcare community's safety.
Christ, they're doing it in almost all the schools now.
Yes.
And we know that schools don't have budgets like that.
No, they don't. But their lawmakers have said, keep our kids safe. These are our children. Yes. And you know what? I completely agree. Hike my taxes as high as you need to if it means we are keeping our children and our schools safe.
My current the elementary school that my children will be going to, I remember last year on town voting day, I weathered this giant blizzard to walk myself to the town hall just to vote for the budget for the renovations,
Yes.
which is in our same school district.
Yes.
But our elementary school, it's not even up to code of current safety standards.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Like, you have to go around a corner to get to the front office.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yep.
someone that wanted to get in, you know, but anyway, like, thankfully that passed, and it's
Yes.
obviously going to take years to build it and get it up to that code, but I'm like, I can't believe it took this long.
Yep.
And it's because the reason it took this long is because people kept voting it down because they didn't want to pay for it.
And it's like, guys,
investing in our children's safety is that not our number one priority?
Exactly.
I think healthcare workers need to be just right up there.
I completely agree with you. Completely agree. People should not be able to walk into an inpatient unit or an ER
keep complaining
with a gun.
You want to keep complaining about hospital wait times. You want to keep complaining about how you can't get in to see your doctor. You want to keep complaining that there's no staff that are going to answer your call light when you want to. Well, then helpfully keep these people safe so that they'll want to work in these environments.
Yes, exactly. Our staffing is low because morale sucks among healthcare workers.
Absolutely.
Globally.
Yeah.
Because these conditions are unacceptable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unacceptable. The burden should not be on the healthcare worker to be the first line of defense in this issue.
Absolutely.
The burden needs to be on the companies, on the hospitals, on everybody's radar. This should be number one priority. Keeping your employees safe. All of these things were completely preventable.
They were.
Ugh. So because of the reactions staff get when they report incidents, a lot of violence gets underreported. So, I mean, we're not even looking at real numbers here.
Right.
I mean, there are things that have happened to me that I've not reported because I'm like, you know what? It's just part of the job. When it's like, you know what? That guy who, grabbed my boob, I probably should have reported that. You know what I mean? Because, like, that is assault.
Right.
And that guy knew better. I know that guy knew better.
Right.
There was a very scary situation one time when I was working evenings at the hospital. And this was the hospital I used to work at as a hospitalist. And I was working alongside a wonderful nocturnist who was handling most of the admissions. But I was helping out with covering the acute issues on the floor and doing a couple admissions as well. This was probably at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And we had gotten a page about an admission who had to go to the ICU. So in the ICU level, the doctor has to do the admission. I cannot do ICU level admissions. So he's going downstairs and seeing the person. And when he comes back up, he's white as a ghost. And I was like, what's going on? And he tells me that EMS had brought in a woman who had ligature marks on both of her hands. She was completely obtunded. Her tox screen was positive for fucking everything. She had a plastic grocery bag tied around her neck, and she had a handcuff, like a shackle, on one wrist. And she was brought back. She was resuscitated. She survived the ordeal. This was a young woman. Immediately, 4 or 5 very big, scary men showed up at the ER entrance inquiring, how is this girl doing? We need to get back and see her. And they're like, she is unstable. She cannot have visitors right now. And they are pushing and pushing and pushing and saying, we need to get in there. We need to see her right now. You're going to let us see her right now. Immediately, red flag, like the police were called because we were like, is this a sex trafficking scenario?
Absolutely.
Because that's kind of what it's looking like.
Right.
So I don't know what happened to this poor soul, this poor woman.
You don't know if she survived?
I have no idea because then I was off after that, which is like so devastating. But I know that through the night that I was on, she survived. She was in the ICU. She was unstable, but they were able to resuscitate her for that time. I don't know what happened to her after that, but I know that the police were called. The men eventually left when somebody, because the police showed up and they took off.
Oh my God.
So I don't even know what happened, but this is small town New Hampshire that this happened in.
Right.
These fucking people are everywhere. And anybody can just walk in. You don't know what you're going to get sent onto your lap for a patient that day. It could be a victim of sex trafficking, potentially, that has a whole crew of people that are trying to track her and keep track of her and want her back.
Oh, how scary.
This was a terrifying moment because we didn't even know if we were safe.
That was real life for the episode of Grey's Anatomy later in the years, right? When the girl kept saying that this lady was her aunt, but she wouldn't leave her alone. She wouldn't leave the room. She wouldn't leave her alone. She kept saying,
This is shit that happens everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. This is small town southern New Hampshire, you guys. This shit happens everywhere.
That is so damn
These
scary.
people, there are dangerous people fucking everywhere. And a lot of administrations are doing nothing to protect us.
Fix it!
God damn it! Will you fix it? Sorry. Anyway, that was me yelling a little bit. So that was just a side story, wicked tangent. Sorry about that. But I felt like that was like a important story to tell because that was a horrible, terrifying moment. So in the past, some changes have been made, including that Congress passed the Workplace Violence Prevention for Healthcare and Social Services Workers Act in April of 2021. And that, I remember hearing about that in the moment too, when I was working, because it was, you know, a great thing for healthcare workers at the time. Basically, it mandates that all healthcare companies operating in the United States must have violence prevention plan. Like they have to have a plan in place for violent people. They have to provide new employees with workplace violence training, which again dumps it on the employee, but like whatever. But the big thing is that they made it so that the penalties for abusing or harming a healthcare worker or assaulting a healthcare worker are a lot higher. So you can get prison time, you can get fined. Like it was this big change in that.
We even have it. And I've seen it firsthand in the recent months about zero tolerance policy for violence.
And that all came from this big change.
With the coworkers too. You know, like
exactly.
Even just a simple grab. Well, see ya. Out.
Exactly.
There's no tolerance.
And then last year, the SAVE Act was introduced, which that hasn't been passed yet, but that could also increase the penalties even further for people who victimize healthcare workers. And since this, like dozens of states have put out state level legislation like this to protect and to make it.
It's not quite enough yet.
No, it's not, because, you know, it's people still are not safe from scary people in the community, in my opinion. It's making it, you know, less attractive option to like victimize a healthcare worker because now you could actually go to jail for that.
Hello.
So what can you do to help? Keep the conversation going. We encourage you guys. So during the month of April, wear red and black ribbons. There's the red and black ribbon to raise awareness for workplace violence prevention and workplace safety in healthcare. And actually, the nurse Erica, who I love, the nurse Erica.
Oh, yes.
She is a very vocal advocate for workplace safety, for safe nurse to patient ratios. She's like the nurse advocate queen. And she has an Etsy page. If you Google her Etsy page, she's making the red and black ribbons and also like a badge reel that has the red and black ribbon on it, which is super cool.
Gotta get me one of those.
Yeah, same. And then another thing you could do, follow, like, share stuff from content creators and nurse advocates who are vocal on the issues. Because if we elevate them and give them more of a platform, things are going to change. So just keep that conversation going. Social media is so influential now. We can use it like to lobby for things. And then another big thing, pick up the phone, call your state and federal level lawmakers, tell your stories, share your concerns. They cannot ignore everyone forever.
Nope.
Call them for, you know, call for them to hold facilities accountable, hold companies accountable, hold agencies accountable, hold the aggressors accountable for their actions. Don't put it all on the healthcare worker.
Damn.
Boom. That's what I got.
I love it.
I know. Now I'm all fucking fired up. I'm ready for that scorpion bowl.
This was very timely and needed, and something we haven't talked about yet. I literally think so.
Well, that's why I was like, how have we not done this yet?
That's great.
Yeah.
This was needed.
Yes. It was cathartic.
Protect us. Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode on this Every Other Tuesday.
Yes.
You can continue to find us by searching for us at MedCrimes on Facebook. Wow.
Yep.
Facebook by searching MedCrimes Podcast.
Good save. That was a good save.
Thank you.
You can also go to YouTube and search MedCrimes Podcast if you're listening and you want to just get the full experience. We're like a lot of fun to watch. We're interesting. We are Kardashians that are interesting to look at.
I have never been told I'm a Kardashian in my life. Fucking right.
I love it.
You can search for us on Instagram by searching MedCrimes Podcast.
If you wish to become a Patreon, you can find us at www.patreon.com/MedCrimesPodcast.
You can also send us your crazy stories if you want to participate in the conversation of workplace violence. Maybe if we get enough participation, we can share some stuff on a
Oh my God,
break room
please.
banter before the prevention
Yes.
month is over
100%. We want to hear from you guys.
at medcrimes@gmail.com.
Stay safe out there, please, for the love of God.